Rich the Truck Guy here, coming at you from Metter Dodge, Chrysler Jeep Ram. Hey, so I wanted to do a little video about some of the common myths and misconceptions about today's era of diesel engines. So another YouTuber had asked me the other day, they had recently purchased a 2019 Ram 2500 with the new 6.7 Cummins turbo diesel. And they were curious about oil change interval. Well, of course, the old rule of thumb for most vehicles is always 3,000 miles, 3 months. And for diesels, a lot of people who have never owned diesels before are confused. They don't know, because they know it's a heavier duty engine. And so some people think it should go longer. Some people think it should be changed more often. So I'm here to dispel a couple of myths and give you some truths and some actual facts behind everything. So, diesel engines can go longer between oil change intervals. Now, up until the more recent developments with having to do the EGR emissions and all the having to do the new EPA regulations as of late in the last few years, older diesel engines you could equip with what they called a bypass oil filtration system. That system would allow you to go several thousands of miles before oil change, some even up to 100,000, because all you were doing was you were testing your oil, sending it in for a sample, and then they would let you know when the time was to change your oil in your diesel engine. Because what a lot of people are now realizing is that to change your oil in a diesel truck, it can be very expensive, because they can hold upwards of 3, 4, 5 gallons of oil. The filters can be expensive. They're hard to get to. And typically when you do an oil change on a diesel engine, not only do you change the oil filter, but you go ahead and do the fuel filter depending on the type of fuel that you run as well. So all of those things can be very expensive. Diesel engines are always going to be more expensive than a regular gas engine, and most of that is because they're a different setup. So as far as oil change intervals, like I said, on your older vehicles, older diesel engines, most people were doing about 5,000 miles or so, between 5,000 to 8,000 miles, depending on the vehicle, to how they used it, or they were using a bypass filtration system and running upwards of 100,000 miles, depending on when they were told to change their oil. So today's modern diesel engines have a tighter tolerance in the engine, so parts are closer together. There's less chance for movement inside the mechanics of the engine itself. Like I said, they have tighter tolerances. There's less gaps, so on and so forth. And also, today's standard of oil that's used in new diesel engines is way, way, way more advanced than anything we've ever had on the market before. They've advanced the viscosity breakdown timing. They've advanced detergents in the oil. So many things that are way above anything that I could ever possibly comprehend, because it's from an engineering standpoint, it's very complicated. So when you go to buy your diesel oil, look on the jug of oil. There's going to be a certification number on there, and it'll say meets or exceeds SAE JE 912, something like that, something to that effect. Say SAE something. Those standards are put out by engineers and so on and so forth, and EPA regulations, and it says that basically not only does this oil have to meet a certain viscosity breakdown timeline, it also has to have a certain detergent life, and it also has to have a certain lubrication rating. Lubricity, this is not really a word, but it has to have a certain lubrication rating. So all these things have to go into effect. And if you've ever done anything with any kind of chemical, you'd understand why this is so important. or why it's so complicated. So today's vehicles now come with an oil life monitor in your vehicle. They have it built in. And the reason why is because the common misconception is, like I said, every 5,000 to 8,000 miles, depending on the vehicle. You don't have to do that anymore. That is old school. That is no longer necessary. Even if it's something you're just, well, that's the way I've always done it, so that's how I'm going to do it. It's not necessary. It's throwing money away. It really is. Because these new vehicles, unless you're taking this truck and putting propane injection on it, running it on the drag strip constantly, you're running, more than 150 horsepower, more than what came factory out of the vehicle. If you're doing any of that excessiveness to the vehicle, to that engine, then of course your oil change interval needs to be really rapid. But if you're using it as the vehicle was intended, so let's say you have a Ram 3500 or 2500 and you use it as the vehicle was intended, as either a tow vehicle, haul vehicle, that kind of stuff, and you're not hauling 80,000 pounds, you're not hauling the max amount of weight, constantly, but maybe you're also using it as a daily driver as well, and you're hauling, maybe, 25 to 28,000 pounds on a regular, say maybe three days out of a week, or even let's say 2 weeks out of a month, so that oil change interval needs to be whatever your vehicle tells you it's going to be. Now, on average, your oil change interval is going to be somewhere around 10,000 miles. And I know what you're saying, that sounds like a lot, but I promise you the engine and oil setup are designed to be at this interval. That's the way they're designed to be. So don't think you're pushing your vehicle too far, because that is the way they're designed to be. Now, obviously, if you want to change your oil at 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 miles, by all means, feel free. Just know that if you're ahead of schedule and you're ahead of your oil life, in your vehicle system, so let's say you just bought a brand new 2019 or 2020 Ram 2500, and here you are, you're coming up on 7,000 miles, 6,000 miles, and you feel like it's time to change your oil. So you go to the dealership and you tell them, hey, I'm here for my first service, and first thing they ask you is, so is your oil light on in your dash? Well, no. Then what brought you in? What made you want to change the oil? Now, that's the question they're going to ask you. Now, you can tell them, hey, I've always done it at 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 miles. That's the way I want to keep doing it. Then they're going to say, okay, no problem. But if you don't really have a reason and you're just, well, that's when I think it should be done, they're going to show you and explain to you that there's a reason why this thing has a built-in oil life. Now, your oil life is going to start at 100%, and it's obviously going to go down as your oil life degrades. Well, when you get down to about 20% oil life is when you need to change your oil. If the vehicle hasn't already told you, service engine oil soon. Now, there are a lot of people out there that still believe in the 5,000 mile rule, and it's not necessary. All it is it's an old school way of thinking, just like on our new gas vehicles. Where the 3,000 mile 3-month oil change came from was the way oil used to be made. Oil was just about crude sludge, and if you didn't change it that often, it would actually become so thick and nasty inside your engine that your engine would actually stop operating if you didn't change it that often. Well, that's no longer the case, because ever since the 80s, oil has been so advanced, and engines have been so much more advanced that these are no longer the case. That's why, if you notice, most new gas vehicles are going 7,000 to 10,000 miles between oil changes. Some of your diesels are going 15,000, 20,000 miles. It all depends on the type of engine, the type of oil you use, how often you use the vehicle. Obviously, with diesel trucks, idle hours are something to consider as well, because idle hours are the same as drive miles. So if your vehicle sits in idles a lot, every 300 hours is about a good interval to have your oil checked. Between 300 and 600 hours is when I recommend changing your oil if your truck sits in idles for a long time. So let's say you have, 4,500 miles on your truck, yet you look down and your engine idle hours are about 450, then it's time to change your oil. Even though you haven't driven as far, the oil still has been being used and working and so on and so forth while that engine runs. The other thing is that the oil itself is working as not only a lubricant and not only a detergent, but it's also a coolant. It's one of the things that helps cool your engine. So eventually over time, if you go too long without changing your oil, yes, your engine temperature does go up. And it's just the same as coolant change intervals. The reason why they tell you change coolant every so often is because these newer coolants also have certain things like silicates and detergents and whatnot that over time they either become corrosive or they're no longer there. They become neutral. So now they're no longer helping keep buildup from occurring in your cooling system, which can also attribute to higher engine temperatures, as well as failure in cooling system parts. So if you have any questions, or you think I'm wrong about anything, or you would like to just have a discussion about this, please feel free, comment below, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, get in touch with me. You can text me at 682-228-0934, and I'll be happy to go over all of this with you face to face. So again, this is Rich, the truck guy out here at Metter Dodge. 682-228-0934. Just let me know and I'll be happy to help you out. I'm happy to be your guy in the car business.